Why, hello, Dan. How are you today?
Hey Matt, I'm doing great. So excited to talk about technology and not about eggs. Did you hear that eggs might be bad for you again?
Yes, I heard that through the rumor mill. No more than 3 eggs a day. Something, is it about
A week.
cholesterol?
A week.
A
They
week?
said that if you eat more than 3 eggs a week, you have a 4% more chance of dying than someone that doesn't. So,
Well, I
uh,
thought we all had a 100% chance of dying.
well, faster. You know what I mean. Heart attack. That's what I mean.
Heart attack. Darn eggs.
What? You're not going to live forever? But back with technology, we've got some really big announcements from the tech giants today. So Apple finally updates the iMac. Matt, you have an iMac. What do you think of it?
It doesn't work. I'm not happy with it at all.
Oh no. What do you mean? Okay, what don't, how long did it last? Did you
Yeah,
like it when it was working?
it lasted, let's see, I bought it at the beginning of 2013. So it lasted 5.5 years. And then it just stopped working about November. Like it would crash, it would hang, all kinds of problems. I took it in to get checked and they said, "Oh, your hard drive went." Now, my
Oh,
iMac is the one that has it a hybrid drive. So
yeah,
it had a small SSD and then it had an actual like magnetic drive, and they
right.
said it was the magnetic drive that went. So I spent $400 and they replaced the magnetic drive. And the problem with these iMacs is they're all glued together. And so it's not just a matter of unscrewing it. You've got to get rid of the glue and peel it back without breaking the screen. So I was like, you know what? My last iMac, I opened it up and I put in that hard drive. I put in a terabyte and it was great. But this one, no, I'm sending it out to be professionally done. So they put a new hard drive in, and within 3 weeks, it started hanging and crashing again.
After you paid $400 for
After
it?
I paid 400, so I brought it back
Ah.
in under warranty, and they just reinstalled the software, and sure, again, within 3 weeks, it started crashing again, and now it won't even turn on. And so the warranty of that repair is gone. So I spent $400 for a brand new hard drive, and it won't even turn on. So I don't know what to do. And I was kind of surprised because Apple's known for the quality of its devices. Now you could argue, hey, you got 5.5 years out of a device.
That's
Well,
pretty good for an Apple device.
yeah, I paid 2 grand for it though. So and you can buy the same year, like the same model as the one I have right now for about $1,000 used.
Oh, it held up.
So, well, it's an asset that would be worth $1,000 if it worked, but I just
Here's what
spent
you do.
400 and it
Here's
doesn't.
here's what you do, Matt. You take
Yeah.
that asset right on down to the place where you donate, whatever it's called in Canada, Goodwill,
Yeah.
and you write it off on your taxes for $1,000. That's
I
how
don't
you do
know
it.
if we can do that in Canada. I know you
Really?
can do that. Oh, yeah, you can do that with clothing and all kinds of stuff down in the States, but I haven't seen anywhere where I could write off charitable donations such as like charitable donations in kind. And you have to get a receipt back
Yep.
that says, "Hey, I donated so much in clothing, in computers, and things like that." And um, nobody does that here, so I don't think it's possible, but it's something to
Really?
look into.
I sure did it here. So Matt actually gave me his iMac
The
maybe
first
about
one, yeah,
4 years ago for Christmas, maybe longer than that.
yeah, is when I got
And
this new one. Yeah.
it was a 2006 iMac, and computers are holding their own lately. I mean, processing power really hasn't gone up that much. You can get higher cores, more RAM, but really the exponential curve hasn't really gone as fast as it has in the past. So it worked really well for me. The problem that I ran into with your old iMac from
Hmm.
2006 wasn't the speed. I actually just installed Windows 10 on it, and it seemed to be pretty zippy. The problem that I found with it was that it was only 32 bits processor. So when I was making games for the iPhone, for Android, everybody knows they've all switched to 64-bit systems now,
Yeah.
and I just couldn't compile it. I couldn't my processor couldn't make the games anymore for it. And even when I would try to run games on Steam, it would say, your computer's only 32-bit, even though it's pretty fast, it can't run it anymore because everything switched over. That's why I donated it, not because I didn't love the Christmas gift. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's interesting. I like the point that you made that really our computing power hasn't really gone as exponential as it used to be. Technically, you might be able to look at it and see the curve, and they'd say, well, actually, it's calculating so much more because it's in 64-bit and blah, blah, blah.
And
But
all the cores and Moore's law, but
right.
really, if you're on a website, it's, you know,
Well, that's the point I want to make is that the majority of what we do now doesn't require crazy processing. The only thing that really does these days tends to be on the graphics side of things. So
yes.
virtual reality and 4K, now they're talking about 8K monitors, right? That's where your processing power is. It's all about rendering all that graphics or Bitcoin mining or, whatever e-currency you're trying to mine. That's where all the processing is happening.
And for us, the reason why we want the powerful computers is because when we make these YouTube videos, crunching a 4K video only takes about 40 minutes on a fast computer. On that old 2006 iMac, it would have taken days. So,
Days and days.
yeah, if you're a YouTube creator, content creator,
Yeah.
and you're doing any kind of video, you definitely want a faster processor. Or if you're coding games, compiling, or like you said, Bitcoin mining, you
Yeah.
want that faster processor. But if you're just like your mom and you're emailing and listening to Spotify, you can use a 10-year-old computer for sure.
And a lot, so artificial intelligence, speech recognition, a lot of this stuff is being done over the air now.
Yes.
So it's like if I speak to Google or Siri or Alexa, it takes the sound bites and processes that in some big server farm elsewhere and processes it super fast and then gets it back to me. And so you pay a premium for your software and your hardware that kind of goes into all those costs. But then you don't need your phone to be crunching all that information or your computer to be crunching that information.
And that's really the way of the future. And we actually have a really exciting announcement from Google today about that, about gaming. And so
Yes,
keep listening to the podcast. In the
we'll get
meantime,
there.
I just wanted to ask you a little bit more about the iMac.
Yes.
What did you think about the setup? Like personally, I like having a laptop because I can throw it in my bag, I can take it to work, I can use
Yeah.
it on my desk. I can you watch Netflix in bed with it. I can move it over to the living room and watch TV in the background and eat something next to it. It's very portable, very convenient. But what did you think about the iMac being stuck in one place? Did you like it? Did you like the bigger screen?
Yeah, I'm split on it. So first of all, love the big screen. The iMac screens, when I bought mine in 2013, they were the best. I mean, you could buy perhaps a higher quality monitor, but you it was really the best all-in-one solution. In fact, they were the first all-in-one solution. So that was fantastic. Loved it. I also liked how you had this giant monitor that everything was included, and I had this tiny little office space. So I have this little cupboard that I kept my computer in, but I also had all my peripherals that were plugged into it. So I had my printer, I had my external hard drive, and then I had tons of filing that had to do with my business and my taxes. And then I could just close it all up and away it goes. So if you want a more permanent station, it was fantastic. But you're right, it's not super mobile. But it was way more mobile as an iMac, an all-in-one solution, than, say, having a tower and then your monitor and your keyboard and everything separate. So about once a year, maybe not quite that much, I would take my entire iMac and then go to a LAN party if anybody still does that.
Did you really?
Yeah, I did. And it was great because I was just going to my neighbor's place and it was huge, but I have a bag, a duffel bag that I could just nestle it in and protect it. And I just slung it over my shoulder and off I went. And everybody else had tiny little laptops they're gaming on, like Left 4 Dead 2 on. And then I had this giant monitor where I was like,
Nice.
oh, as I would, take them out. So it it was nice that way, but I think you're right. I prefer a setup that I have right now at work where I have a docked laptop.
Oh yeah.
And then I use my laptop screen as a reference screen. So I actually do an above and below setup where
Mhm.
I have my laptop open and I type on the keyboard. Lots of people with docked laptops have separate keyboards. But in
Right.
this case, I'll type on the laptop keyboard, I'll have my reference screen, and then above it I have a larger monitor where I'll have my spreadsheets and Gantt charts and all kinds of things that I'm working on. And I prefer that because if I need to go, unplug, yoink, off I go with just the laptop.
Perfect. Very convenient. Well,
Yeah.
let's talk about the new features with the new iMac today. So both the 21 inch and the 27 inch are updated. So the actual design is actually the exact same. So it looks the same, but the 21 inch now has 6 cores and it's the 8th generation Intel CPU.
Hmm.
And then the 27 inch also has 6 cores, and you can go all the way up to 3.6 gigahertz or a ninth generation 8 core Intel i9 CPU, which is insanely fast.
Yes. And
So I get,
insanely expensive.
well, yes, and we'll get there. I guess the big news is that arguably both sizes now offer high-end workstation class Vega-graphics options this time. So I don't know if you've heard of the Vega-graphics card.
I
It's
haven't.
pretty cool. One frustrating thing about buying laptops, especially Apple laptops, is that for the longest time it always had the embedded CPU, GPU, so it didn't have its own graphics processing unit on it, and that meant that graphics were compromised. So last year, Apple finally started offering this Vega graphics card that's separate from the CPU. And so it's got a lot more RAM, a lot more power horsepower to do all kinds of gaming, 3D gaming, but it's only offered on the big 15-inch laptop. This is the big new feature this year, is that that Vega graphics card is now offered for the iMac, where it's always been the two-in-one CPU, GPU in the past. What people don't know about these iMacs is that basically they're just laptops with a big screen.
With a big screen,
Yeah,
yes.
this isn't the Mac Pro with, really fast processor, a separate really fast video card for gaming and virtual reality. These iMacs are basically just a laptop with a big screen, and that's it.
So, do you think this Vega chip is capable of, say, VR or 4K, 8K monitors that are coming out? Like, it always seems that Apple is now playing catch up, and it's honestly the reason why I'm not even looking at Apple when I replace my computer.
Yeah. Well, what I got from the information from their website is they say it's going to be a 50% performance improvement over the previous Radeon cards that were in them in the past. So that's good news. Can it handle full VR? I'm not sure, but the fact that it's a separate card in a laptop situation is great news in my opinion.
For swappability and upgradability, but they're not very upgradable when they're glued together, right? And
Yeah, I
yeah,
don't think you'd be able to swap it out or upgrade it, but the fact that it's its own mind and its own brain is
yeah.
actually good even too if you're into Bitcoin mining, because the faster your graphics card, you can actually harness that. Just the way how the chips are built and the way how their code is, you can mine a lot faster. So I wanted to talk about the cost now.
Sure, let's
Believe
do
it or
it.
not, if you max everything out in American dollars, it's $16,000 for the
Oh
beefiest
my goodness,
iMac. And
$16,000.
remember, we're not talking about a professional workstation here. We're talking about laptop-based chips inside of this.
Yeah.
But really, what the most expensive thing is updating your RAM. So you can actually pay $5,000 to upgrade your RAM from 32 gigabytes to 256. Now that's insane.
Yes.
I want to talk a little bit about RAM. Most people will never need more than 16 gigabytes of RAM to play video games at this point in 2019. 32 to 64 gigs will take care of most video editing and 3D modeling tasks. So with 256 gigs of RAM, you could do things like artificial intelligence processing, or even you could lease your computing power to other people over the internet. Um, So it's funny. I remember Bill Gates when we were young, he said nobody would need anything more than 16K of RAM back then, right?
Yes,
And now
yes.
that's laughable. I mean, because in his mind, he was thinking, oh, we're only going to need it for word processing, for
Yeah.
really simple games. But when you get stuck in that mindset, you don't think of the potential of the future.
Hmm.
And so this article that I read, did state nobody needs more than 16 to 64 gigabytes of RAM at this point. In 10 years, I think we're gonna laugh. You'll
We're gonna
listen to
laugh
this
at that. Yeah.
and
Our
you'll say,
phones are gonna be doing that easy.
I bet in 10 years our phones are gonna have more than 256 gigabytes of RAM.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be so fast. Other things that are expensive here, if you want to do a better video card, you can pay another $700 for the 16 gigabyte Radeon video card.
Okay, so that should handle VR, but how much do you pay for that?
$700 more. But I
$700.
mean, the nice thing is it's not that bulky box. I
Yeah.
hated that. I hated that last year when they were like, well, you bought your MacBook Pro and you want to do some 3D stuff. Here's this weird box
Box.
that you can attach to your
Yeah.
computer. No, just freaking put it inside the computer in the
Put it in
first
the
place.
computer.
And
Everybody else does.
I'll pay $700. I just don't want a box on my desk. I bought a laptop for a reason, right?
Yeah.
So that's nice. You can pay the $700 and have that inside. Really, what this boils down to, though, is it's a lot of money. Here's the other thing. I
Yeah.
don't think you're going to want to spend $16,000 on this computer
No.
because even if you get the fastest processor, the most RAM, you get the best video card in here, I get the feeling, and Apple always says no, I get the feeling that one day they are going to bend and they're going to have a freaking touch screen. And when they update their operating system so that it works with all Apple iPhone games and iPhone apps,
Yeah.
and all these new things come with the touch screen, they're going to turn around and say, oh, this is our new thing, where Windows has been doing it forever. You're going to be stuck with a $16,000 computer that you can't even touch.
No touchscreen. Yeah. And
That's
you're
my
gonna be using your little mouse paddy thing where you're touching and trying to play Angry Birds on your $16,000 computer.
Exactly. Okay, I have one more thing to say. So I was
Yeah.
scrolling through Reddit today because I was interested in this computer. I think it's a
Yeah.
good looking computer. And I was like, what do people think on the internet? The hard drive sucks.
Really?
So here's the thing, it's still a physical hard drive.
Yes.
It might be a hybrid like you had in yours, but
Hmm.
it's not an SSD hard drive.
It's not.
The thing about SSD hard drives, they make at least Apple so much faster. Um,
Yes.
this new laptop that I have has an SSD and it boots up in like 3 seconds from scratch.
Yeah.
And it shuts down. It does everything so fast, moves files, deletes files. Everything is almost instant. It doesn't really have a lot to do with the computing power, not a whole lot to do with the RAM. It has to do with the fact that my hard drive's an SSD. Well,
Yes.
these iMacs don't even come with that as a baseline option. So if you're going to buy it, please update it to the SSD and it's going to be much more expensive.
Wow, that's crazy. So, um, I used to be the biggest Apple fanboy. Like I've had two iMacs. I spent $2,000 in 2013 on an iMac. And I think I spent that much on the one that you got as well. And I used to get every iPhone when it came out. But this is just too expensive. And I know we're talking about the most expensive one, but really, Dan, $700 to get a 16 gigabyte Radeon video card? Really?
I mean,
That,
be spending $700 for the computer. I mean,
yeah.
this is the margin on these things is ridiculous. They're making so much money off of you because you want to be that person sipping on your latte in downtown
Ooh,
LA. Yeah, it's
with your
showing off
iMac.
your iMac.
So I think that's the biggest problem. And if you look at Apple's numbers, their iMac sales have stalled and dropped significantly. And I think it's partially because of the same thing you pointed out earlier. People just prefer a mobile medium. And the computer station is going away, even in the work field. I can't even imagine remember the last time I had a tower at work. It's always been a laptop with a dock for at least 10 years.
Really?
And so that's the same thing with people's personal computers. The only reason why I liked having the iMac at home is it was that massive screen and it's great for gaming. So if I was gaming on my iMac, I wanted that big screen. But really, get a monitor and and plug it in, right?
Right.
So, and also what's fascinating is it seemed like the all-in-ones were where everything was going. So after the iMac got so popular, then you had Lenovo was copying the
Dell had
all-in-one.
one. Yeah.
Dell and Microsoft has now put out, they've got a Surface all-in-one version as well that's a big
I
one.
bet you
And
can touch the screen.
oh, you can touch the
Yeah.
screen and you can draw all over it. So it was kind of the direction that things were going. But then when VR became popular and people were buying rigs and customizing rigs for virtual reality, all of a sudden the tower came back. Because as we mentioned earlier, you don't need a screaming awesome latest and greatest processor. If you can upgrade your RAM, if you can upgrade your video card, all of a sudden you're playing the latest, greatest games and you got VR going on. And so it seems now we're back to towers because it's customizable. You can swap parts in and out. At least that's my observation. What have you seen?
Yeah, and I see you have an article here about Sony doing VR. What's that about? They're going wireless, right?
Well, that's what the patent shows. So, patents always have to be filed and approved, and that's where people kind of look to see leaks before they're leaked. So, who knows really how long or even if this is going to happen. But the patent shows a wireless headset. So, a lot of people are assuming, well, this could be the PlayStation VR 2 and just because it's ready for a refresh and will most likely refresh with the next iteration of PlayStation, which would be PlayStation 5.
Cool.
Yeah, but there are some technical difficulties when it comes to wireless virtual reality. HTC last CES showed off basically an attachment that they could put on their Vive headset, and it was a 60 gigahertz um, connection that would connect and it would hang off the back of your headset and then connect directly to your computer
And give you cancer.
and give you cancer. But the thing about it is it worked most of the time, but it didn't have a feedback loop where it wasn't getting information back. It was only coming one direction, which was
Ah,
from the computer to the virtual reality, and then the computer had all the sensors to see where you were. So what's interesting about what PlayStation's done is when they filed this patent, it means they've tested and proven the wireless technology, but they've also put an extra 5 gigahertz feedback loop, which gives information from the headset back to the system. And it's a two-way. And so that redundancy loop, what it does is if you walk out of the range of the 60 gigahertz, because you got to be close, that 5 gigahertz feedback loop will keep you in and it will
cool.
keep the refresh rate. You'll lose your resolution, but you're not going to get motion sick. Whereas on the HTC Vive, from what I was reading online, when people get out of range of the 60 gigahertz, all of a sudden it's like, and they get really nauseous,
Oh
and then
no.
they're trying to connect again, and then you gotta calibrate, and it's a real pain. So what PlayStation's done, or should I say Sony has done with this PlayStation headset, is added that extra 5 gigahertz, and it sounds like it's making all the difference. So, is it real? Are we going to see it? Is it going to be in the next version? We don't know, but something I'm looking forward to.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. PlayStation's done a great job bringing virtual reality to the masses. It's so easy to go to
Yes.
Target or Walmart or Costco and just get the PlayStation virtual reality headset because your kids already have a PlayStation. HTC Vive, it's so complicated. You have to get an expensive fancy tower. Moms and
Mhm.
dads just don't know what to do at Christmas for that. So this is much easier, and really exciting to see that they're gonna try and make it wireless. I wanted to talk a little bit more about video games now because I think we are gonna see a complete transformation this year.
Yes.
So Google debuted a new video game streaming service called Stadia
Uh-huh.
and today, and this is so exciting. Basically, it means that you can now stream 4K and even 8K video games over the internet to your devices.
Wow.
So this was announced in San Francisco at the Game Developers Conference, the GDC.
Hmm.
So it's not a dedicated console or a set-top box. What that means is you don't have to buy a Nintendo or a PlayStation or an Xbox. It's can go on anything.
Well, how
So
does it work?
in the demonstration, they actually just pulled out a Chromebook, and as you know, Chromebooks are like low-end,
Cheap, cheap.
cheap, slow processors. I mean, they've been using these in schools for the last few years, and
Yes.
really not very expensive at all. So they whip out the Chromebook, and then they immediately start playing really fancy games right on a low-end PC. And they pick up where the game left off in real time. And so they say that you can actually start playing a game on YouTube, and that's how it's going to work. So you're going to be on YouTube. Maybe you want to play Command and Conquer. Maybe you want to play Black Ops. Maybe you want to play the latest Prince of Persia. I don't know what you're into. So you go there on YouTube, you type
Hmm.
it in, and then there's going to be a button that's an option to start playing the game. They say within 5 seconds on most machines and phones and whatever you're game playing on, it'll start up. And so Assassin's Creed, you can do that in 4K. Yeah, they say in 5 seconds it's going to launch.
So what you need is you need the a browser, which isn't much, right?
Yeah,
Chromebook is all you need. You'll probably want that 4K screen,
of
so
course.
like a nice monitor or a TV that you're streaming it to, and then you'll need the bandwidth. So you're going to need an internet service provider that can give you the bandwidth. Did they say anything about the data that you would be using to be streaming that kind of? Well,
Well,
it
here's
may
the
not
thing.
be a lot.
It's on YouTube.
Yeah,
So if you can do a 1080p video on YouTube, you
it's
can
the same.
play Assassin's Creed in 1080p on YouTube.
Yeah,
So it's the same because all of the processing is going on in the cloud. And
right.
they say they have over 250 countries that they have this cloud data processing on. So you could be in England, you could be in Canada, you could be Australia. You're going to be able to play these really fancy games in 1080p if that's how fast your internet goes. And if you have an even faster process, I watch 4K all the time on Netflix. If
Hmm.
you're running Netflix and you're watching the latest Arrested Development in 4K, you can play Assassin's Creed in 4K.
Yeah.
And so I think this is a really great thing. What I picture and envision seeing is things like Roku, things like Apple TV, things that are already set up for your living room, the NVIDIA Shield, things like that I think are going to be really popular to play these games on. And what I'm hoping is that more and more game developers will start to grab onto this model.
And I see the next step would be virtual reality in the same way,
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about
right? They
that. That's
already
really
have
cool.
YouTube VR things that you can watch. And so you do need to double the power because you're going to need the resolution for each eye. And you'll need to get the refresh rates up, which is also more bandwidth that you need to use and more processing power that's going to be happening in the cloud. But that's probably the next step. And so you won't need the $1,000 or gaming rig with the latest and greatest graphics card. You'll just need something that could plug into the internet and put on your VR helmet because your VR
Yes.
helmet will already have a browser in it. So I think this is wonderful. And Google's not the first to do this,
No, of course not.
right? There
But
have been streaming services before. PlayStation had their streaming service not at 4K, but I believe they did it at 720p. When they had the Vita, that was maybe 5 years ago when they were doing 720p. Then they kicked it up to 1080p, but they didn't have a lot of games. And I know Nvidia does it, but I'm not sure if it's true streaming. I think they would actually, and our listeners can correct me if I'm wrong, But I think you have to have an NVIDIA graphics card on a computer, and then it would use the graphics power from your card. But I could be completely wrong. It may just be you've bought an NVIDIA card, which gives you access because you've invested in the NVIDIA company to their servers, which are processing everything in the cloud. So it's one of those two things, and I think it's pretty neat. Now, this is going to be a service, right?
Yes.
A
Yeah, you're gonna have to
subscription.
pay for it. I didn't get any information on the numbers, but I mean, think about how cool it would be to just be on YouTube and click a play button for a fancy game. I mean, how
Yep.
frustrating is it to go out, buy a whole console that's like $200-300? You have to get all the controllers, you have to get all the wires in your living room. I'm
Hmm.
so sick of wires and things. Honestly,
Yeah.
I don't have a big house. I just want my TV screwed into the wall and no wires anywhere,
Yeah.
you know?
And
And
TVs are coming with their own browsers now too.
yeah.
They're all
And
coming smart.
and maybe, you should hold off on buying a big screen TV if you're in the market now, because perhaps when this is launched, we can find out which companies support it. And that way you don't have to get an extra Roku or an extra NVIDIA Shield. It'll
Yep.
just come with your TV. So I think that would be a wise move to wait until at least Black Friday to buy your big screen. Okay, so we're going to talk about one more thing. Have you heard about the Polestar 2?
Yeah, it looks great. I was actually reading some articles and looking at pictures of it, and it's the second one. So it's Volvo's electric vehicles. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's a tricky word to say, isn't it?
Volvo.
Volvo. Yeah, it's funny when I grew up, actually one of my best friends, my mom and dad would always drive around in a Volvo, and
Yeah.
those things lasted forever, Matt.
Yeah, they do.
My whole friendship, we were in the same car, and it must have lasted them 20 years because
Yeah.
they're just so easy to fix and they're such a great engine. It's funny though, Volvos, they're kind of a fancier car now. I think I was fooled when I was younger into thinking that, middle class people have Volvos, because now that I'm older and see how fancy they are, it
Yeah.
really is something that upper middle class typically will get. But they're great cars, great engines. The Polestar is actually, they're under Volvo, so they aren't actually a Volvo. That's the parent company, but they
Okay.
do borrow a lot of looks, and a lot of the factories that they use to create them
A
is
lot of
how.
parts as well,
Yeah,
I'm
a lot
sure.
of exactly.
Like the wipers and yeah.
So let's talk about the difference between the Polestar 1 and the Polestar 2. So this new Polestar 2, it isn't as sleek, but it does carry the design language of the brand with a bit of Volvo's visual heritage thrown in for good measure. The car itself is a little bit beefier than its predecessor, both in the front and the back, but you can see Volvo's influence everywhere. From the headlights to the interior, it's clear how closely the sub brand relies on its automotive parent. But it's more than just a stylized headlights and steering wheels. This is a really great car. It starts out at $40,000, which is actually pretty comparable to the Model Y, which is kind of the SUV darling right now that everyone's talking about.
Hmm.
Um, so the range is about 275 miles, which is awesome. And it's 408 horsepower, and you can go from 0 to 60 in 4.7 seconds. So this is putting it directly against the Model 3 and the Model Y. Here's the problem with the Polestar 2. It's probably not even going to start being released until next year.
Yep.
And when it comes out next year, the launch edition is going to cost $63,000. And look, a lot can happen in the next 2 years. And so in the next 2 years, Tesla is going to be selling all of these Model 3s, possibly the Model Y. And then if they try to launch, I mean, they're kind of behind in the game, in my opinion. What do you think?
Well, just about everybody's behind Tesla. Everybody's playing catch up. In fact, when Tesla first came out, and Elon Musk kind of highlighted this when he announced the Model Y on Thursday, I was actually in my hotel room in Toronto, and it was 11:30 at night when he
And he
finally
pulled it
showed
up.
us the Model
That's right.
Y.
Because he did it in El Segundo in Los Angeles, right? So
Yeah,
Pacific
that's
time.
right. And I was like,
Sorry.
oh, it's so late, but I had lots of work to do, so I was up anyways. But he basically pointed out that when Tesla first came out and said, hey, we're going to make this all electric car, and everybody laughed at him and said, no, this isn't going to happen. This isn't going to work. And now look at everybody playing catch up. So Ford is making a massive investment. Um, Volvo. You can edit that. So
I don't think
Volvo's
we are. We're keeping it in.
keeping it in, doing it live. We're doing it
Doing it
live.
live.
So Volvo's going all in, and Volkswagen's going all in. You're losing it. So, anyways, all these big monster companies are doing catch up. And by the time they catch up, what's Tesla going to do next, right? So, and Tesla looks like they've actually turned a profit. So it's not like they're just constantly borrowing money. And I don't know, did you watch any of the Model Y presentation?
I did, but I have to name one company that you didn't mention. Toyota.
Toyota,
I
yeah,
am so
Honda.
frustrated with them because you know our family is so funny. We all have Toyotas,
Yeah,
right?
we do. Yeah,
Like we all had a Corolla. Mom
Corollas.
and dad do, you do. Our
Yeah,
brother Joe did. But here's the thing. Toyota years ago decided that they were going to go all in on hybrid technology.
yeah.
And I was thinking, my Corolla is almost 5 years old, so I thought, maybe I'll start looking at updating it in the next year or two. And so I went on their website, looked at the 2020 edition. There's no all-electric option.
Hmm.
It is all hybrid. And I thought that was so ridiculous. So I did a Google search, and sure enough, they don't have plans to do an all-electric car anytime soon because their batteries are all hybrid. All of the money that they've invested in is hybrid.
Yeah,
And so thank goodness Volvo is doing this all
yeah.
electric. These other companies are, and thank goodness for Tesla, right?
It's mostly the European companies that made the first announcement, and that could be because of the incentives that the European Union has for these companies to go all electric, environmental wise, things like that. So you can see that, yes, it was first Tesla that really proved the concept. People have been looking at electric cars for a long time. And then the European companies started announcing Jaguar is, I mean, technically they're Ford, but they used to be a British company, and Volkswagen and BMW, Mercedes, they're all going all electric, but they're so far behind, Dan, and there's so much infrastructure that they have to build specifically around the
The
batteries.
battery, yeah, and they don't
Yeah,
have the big battery plant in Nevada that Tesla has, and
yeah.
it'll be interesting. I'm really excited with this Polestar too. It made me happy to see this. Remember, we did the Rivian truck. We did that review a few
Hmm.
podcasts back. You guys can look it up. We'll link it to it in our notes. It's great that we're getting competition and that it's going to really just drive the price down for the consumer and make it so that we're going to be doing all electric SUVs, all electric trucks for cheaper. And so this is great to see this in the marketplace.
Yeah, there was another announcement just the other day, and I'm gonna call this one the wrong name too. Let's see if I can find it here. But they announced another SUV. I think it's Fisker or something like that, and it's their second one that they've announced, but they haven't produced anything. And oh, it's gonna do everything that a Tesla can do. It's gonna be more like the Model X, but the price of the Model Y, and it's gonna have 500 miles to the battery. And okay, that's great. Where's your product, right?
Well, that's true. And people are really struggling, but Hyundai's got the Kona that people are really liking now.
That's true. And I think it's 200 miles to the battery. And you know what? It looks great. And when you compare it to the Chevy Volt, which was like the first one that really came out, that yeah, it's a bit of a hybrid, but it's really an all electric powertrain. And the only thing that gas is used for is a little generator to
Nice.
get you a little bit more. So you could really call the Chevy Volt was the first real full production
Mhm.
electric vehicle other than what Tesla was putting out. There's probably a few little startups here and there that somebody might say, "You're wrong. It's this one," but it's the first mass production one. And so if you compare the Chevy Volt to the Hyundai Kona, It's just no comparison. I would pick the Hyundai. The Nissan Leaf is nice too, but take the Hyundai. You get way
Yeah.
more range, and range anxiety is a real thing.
Well, and not only that, but that Leaf is so small.
Yeah,
There's
like
people
a little
that
game.
where I work that pull into it, and I'm like, that's a clown car. Anyway,
It's a
that's
Kinder
our.
Surprise, and you open it up, and you're the surprise.
You're the surprise. But that's our podcast for this week. We'd love to hear back from you. Thank you for all your comments on YouTube. If you guys have any opinions on anything we've talked about today, please let us know. If you want us to chat about anything in the future, please send us a tweet at Tech Time Show PC. Have a great week.
Catch you next week.